I see it as there's a lake, and there's a lake, we'll start there, and there's a shed. And I think the shed more properly should be called a workshop, but I always call it a shed in my head. So the lake is where stuff just comes up out of. And I've always imagined that there's something living in that lake that chucks me things. It just throws things up at me that I catch. And then I take them in the shed and I work on them. So, but this is where things start getting a bit elaborate. So when I read my own writing, and often when I read other people's writing as well, I often think of it in terms of there's too much lake and not enough shed there. That wasn't worked on long enough. You didn't work on. At other times, I think that's pure shed. You just, you bang that up. There's nothing of the lake in there. So I have the best writers, the absolute pinnacle. They have an amazing lake and they have a phenomenal shed. Something that borders on a palace, right? In other words, they have extraordinary stylistic tools. They are amazing prose technicians, but they also have that bizarre ability to pull out the idea that no one else has ever quite done before, or to extract the character who lives with virtually nothing done to it. I swear to you, I've wanted to be a writer as long as I knew there was such a thing as a writer. But I have this very weird early memory, and I know I must have been 4 or under, because we left the first house that we ever lived in as a family when I was 4. And I know it was in that house because I can just about remember it. And I couldn't write, but I was copying figure by figure, letter by letter, a story. And I just copied it out on a page. And I didn't know what I'd written, I just copied the words. And there I was very pleased that I had made these marks on the paper. And I physically enjoy writing, I always have. And then I realised that books were made by people. I can't remember realising that, but I assume I did. And I never, ever wanted to do anything else. Potter, really. I wrote other things. I was constantly writing. I was always writing. And there was a novel called The Private Joke that I was writing for a couple of years. The premise of it I actually still really like, but I was too young to write the book that I wanted to write. Too young because I just didn't have enough life experience to credibly write these characters who were all in their sort of early 40s. It was just not going to work, even though I still think the premise was decent. Before that, I was writing a different thing that was appalling. But you've got to write some appalling stuff. You go through phases, and when you're very young, you're back and you imitate different people, but that's good, that's healthy. And it was really only with Potter that I hit my stride, and I thought, oh, I can do this. This I can do. I could feel that I could do it. So, yeah, and I learned as I went. I don't know. I don't know where ideas come from. I think the more interesting question might be, why do some people want to live in a fictional world so much, and why do some of us voluntarily spend hours and hours alone in a fictional world? But the trouble is I can't answer that question either. But that's maybe the more pertinent question. Some of us just are happy living that way, happiest living that way. Ideas come in different ways, and different kinds of book form differently. That's been my experience. So with Harry, the idea really did come, it was the idea for the story, the premise of the story came first, which was literally a child doesn't realise he's a wizard until he gets the letter. With other books, with the Ickabog, the word Ickabog came. I thought, what is that? What is an Ickabog? And that's how the story started, with me trying to find an entity to attach that word to. And with the Strike books, the character came first. He came first. I did want to write what I saw as quite a golden age whodunit, but in a modern setting. And it was interesting to think, well, how would that work? How do you, in this age of DNA analysis and high-tech detective techniques and CCTV cameras, how do you have a real old school detective in modern London? And so he was really the starting point there. But Robin came very quickly afterwards, and then I became very interested in Robin in the planning of the book, and I realised that this will be a two-hander. She's not going to be Watson forever. We'll have two Holmeses. What would normally happen is I'm working on a novel and I'm immersed in that novel completely, but I might it will normally happen at a completely random moment when you're making gravy or something, and you'll have an idea for a different thing, so you run and find a notebook, and then you lose the notebook, and, if it was a good idea, it'll hang around, and if it wasn't a good idea, you'll find it in 5 years' time. And sometimes I look through these notebooks and think, what on earth was that? What did you think you were going to do with that? And then other times, you have the idea and it sticks, and then it grows like something in a Petri dish. And they're the ones that are worth something, the ones that really hang around. You almost didn't need to write them down. They're the ones that live in here. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb, actually. If it's meant to be, it'll lodge up here. I learned a huge amount writing Potter. So even though this is a different kind of world building, I took all of the lessons I learned from Potter and applied them to the Galbraith books. I have a master files on all these different characters. I have huge amounts of background just to keep myself orientated. I know where Strike lived. I know a huge amount about his mother's history that I will never need to use. But sometimes you do need to use it. Sometimes you realise, hang on, we can put this would thematically work really well here. So yeah, it sounds prosaic. It sounds like being a sort of filing clerk or something for your own work, but in a sense that's what you do. You organise it all and you've got it there to refer to. That's just the way I feel happiest working. I've certainly met writers, good writers I enjoy, who have said to me, I just see where the thread takes me. I do a lot of the thread following in the planning stage. By the time I come to write, I really know what I'm doing. That doesn't mean to say there isn't room to have fun or there isn't room to go off on a little tangent here and there, but I really like the sense of knowing where I'm going. I think it will be a 10-book series, and so I have a very clear idea of how their relationship will go over those 10 books. So it sounds quite prosaic. It's more exciting than that, but it sounds dull to think, well, in that book, that emotional milestone will be reached and so on. But you do sort of have to have those points of light along the way, because it gives it I think it gives it a satisfying rhythm. So on the one hand, I'm looking at their relationship, but then you have these discrete, these self-contained plots along the way, which are all formed in different ways. Because I had the idea for the second plot in the Strike series, The Silkworm, before I had the idea for The Cuckoo's Calling. I reversed them because I thought that Silkworm would work better as a second book, as a second case. The first one had to be something that he had to make his name from to an extent, just to move the character along. So a good example would be Lady Strike, Strike's mother. I know down to individual concerts that she ran away to go and see. It was ridiculous. I spent hours on this stuff. So I've got this huge, long biography for her, where she ran away to, who she slept with, who she wanted to sleep with. The reason all of that's valuable is it's not because you're going to use all of that. You're not going to take 4 chapters to describe what Lady did when she ran away at 18. It's because you get such a sense of the person in creating that. I got to know her really well. And obviously she never appears in the books because she's dead. But she still casts a very long shadow over her children's lives. So yeah, I got to really understand her. One of the things I really love particularly when you're creating backstory for a character, is I often feel like, oh yeah, that's how it happened. It feels like discovery rather than creation. That often happens to me. And sometimes that happens to me with plot. I'll hit a snag and I'll sit back, I'll mentally sit back. And then it comes and you think, oh yeah, of course that's how it happened. But it feels like discovery. It doesn't feel as though I made it up. It feels as though I waited and then I saw it and it was there to be discovered. I know this sounds very weird. But yeah, I often feel as though the right ideas feel as though you've discovered them. They were there waiting to be discovered as opposed to you actually creating them. Yeah. I don't think a character has ever done that to me. Plots have I've sometimes plotted it and then thought either that won't work or there is a better way to do this. And that often involves a lot of tinkering backwards and forwards because, you know, these things should fit together in a satisfying way. You want it to fit together in a satisfying way. I really know my characters. Yeah. We have an understanding. They don't misbehave and I don't put them through too much hell. I absolutely love the planning process because you're still in that amazing optimistic state where you think this will be the book that you're entirely happy with. This will be the one that you have no regrets about, and you know everything is possible. All the pages are blank, so I really like that stage. And I have various quotations about writing actually in my little loo in there, all around those walls, and I have two up here that I really like. And this one is by Faulkner, and it expresses it just perfectly. The work never matches the dream of perfection the artist has to start with. Never, never, never. So, but when you're in the planning stage, you can kid yourself, oh, this is going to be the one. This is going to be great, this one. So yeah, I enjoy that very optimistic stage. And you know, I enjoy the craft aspect of it. I really enjoy the construction part of it. And weirdly, as I've got older, I've enjoyed that more and more and more. And I think I've sort of one writer, a very successful writer, who is the other way around, used to plan tons and now just doesn't feel they need to plot as meticulously. I've definitely gone the other way. So I used to do everything in notebooks, and I still do use notebooks a lot. That was from Lethal White. So I end up drawing all of these. I like this, to be slotted in. Elegant. But all these various, some of them are red herrings. Yeah, I look back and sometimes I can't remember what the hell I was writing at the time. But increasingly, I do a lot of planning on the laptop. I'll show you what I do now. I used to just handwrite all these tables. So I've got red herrings. I always do clues in blue. It's just a reminder of where information is supposed to be given, and different columns for strands of the story. Each row is a chapter, obviously. So yeah, and I always colour code. So down the side, that means Strike and Robin are together. A sort of middle grey means it's just Strike on his own, and a light grey means it's just Robin on her own. And it's a good way of seeing at a glance how much page time each is getting. Because I like the balance. I like to shift between them a lot. And then when they're together, it's always, you know, stuff's always going on when they're together. So yeah, I do still use the notebooks, particularly when I'm travelling. Obviously, it's nice to have a book to just jot ideas down in. But a laptop is useful, must be said. I do. I love writing longhand. I physically enjoy writing longhand. Often at night, particularly at night, I can be absolutely exhausted. Say it's 3 a.m. and I have been working since, let's say, 10 the previous morning because my waking started to slip because I'm getting nocturnal again. And you think, right, you're done. You can barely focus on the thing. So you close the laptop and it's absolutely guaranteed that you'll be halfway up the stairs and another idea will come. Absolutely guaranteed. So I try always have a notebook in the bedroom because then before I get to bed, I can write it down. Or I type it into my phone, or I will go back to the laptop and open it up. And it depends what sort of an idea it is. If it's something, a one-liner, I will put it on my phone. But if it's an idea for a whole bit of dialogue, I've got to go back to the laptop. So you do get to a point where your brain is just so utterly consumed by it, it's exceptionally hard to shut it down. It's a peculiar thing. You just can't close it off. It does feel different to do a standalone book. So I've done 3, and I intend to do more. Obviously, just from a prosaic level, when you're in a series, you're engaged in such a big piece of work. It's incredibly immersive. That said, with all the 3 standalones I've done, novels, because I've done other little books, The Casual Vacancy and The Christmas Pig and The Ickabog, but The Ickabog was a very special project. I was totally immersed in all of those while I was writing them and really enjoyed it. There's more of a sense of completion, I think. Obviously, with a series, you've always got something to go, so you never quite have that sense of catharsis. And then when you reach the end of the series, the sense of catharsis is tinged with sadness because it's been with you for so long. The editing that I do, a constant back and forth, I do enjoy. I see it as an important part of writing. I have worked with amazing editors, and my current editor, David, is just a joy to work with. And yeah, I enjoy that. It's important to have that objective person. You've lived with this thing for 12 months longer often. It's very important to get that objective view. I would say at least 9 times out of 10, if he says to me, I feel it's dragging a bit here, it will be a part that I have my doubts about. I really enjoy that. Then you get to copy editing, which is where you're reminded that you misspell, you've got a blind spot on spelling one word, or, you didn't spot the hanging participle and all of that. So that gets to be a bit more nitpicky, but obviously very, very important. And also for things like times and dates, I'm a bit numerically blind. So as hard as I work on making sure the dates all work together, I'm by no means infallible on that. So a good copy editor is great. I'm more involved now, probably, than I've ever been. I think the landscape has changed for writers, in writers' favour, with regard to things like covers. And I think the rise of self-publishing has a lot to do with that. Writers have options now. And certainly when I was first published in 1997, you really didn't have a say. That was something that the art department were going to work. That's not to say I disliked covers necessarily. I'm just saying I can't remember ever really being asked an opinion. Maybe with the later Potter books, but it was pretty much a fait accompli by the time it got to me. I used to find titles quite difficult. I think titles are difficult, but I've become more relaxed about it. I think the only 2 titles the publisher ever had a query about, initially, The Silkworm, the second book in the Galbraith series, was called Bombyx Mori, which is Latin for silkworm. My editor said, no, that's not going to work. And I think he was probably right. So we changed it to The Silkworm. And the other title that there was an issue with was The Casual Vacancy. But I stood firm on that one, because I love it as a phrase. The casual vacancy is a term used in local government for when someone dies, and it seems such a peculiar phrase to use for a death. Thematically, it worked with the book. It's a book about absences, the absences we leave when we die, and various lacks and absences that lead to commonplace tragedies. So, yeah, I was very wedded to that title. I wanted to keep it. And the other one, famously, was Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, was changed to Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in the States. Beginnings are harder for me than endings. I normally know where I'm going. I'm very future-orientated. I think that by the time you hit the end, if everything has been woven together correctly, that should be a pretty easy part to write. So I've a few times written the final chapter of a book before I've written the first chapter. And I've done that on the current book that I'm writing, which is Strike number 8. It's a question of tone. Tone is important to me. And it sort of seeps backwards through the book. I know where I'm heading. It's a bit of a sort of lodestar. I need to know where I'm going. This will all make sense if people read the book. But yeah, I had to know exactly, and it's a very important final chapter. So for the whole series. So yeah, I really needed to know where I was working towards, and I don't think I doubt any word of that will change. It's very well, it's completely formed, that chapter. So I think it will remain pretty much exactly as it is. Within the normal parameters, I can write pretty much anywhere. Yeah, this is my favourite place to write. After years of writing, I finally got to build somewhere to write in, and I absolutely love it. You've got a tiny little loo, a cupboard-shaped kitchen, and so I've got everything I need in here. And it's psychologically, just to walk across the lawn and come to a different space to work is very good for you. That said, I do have a bad habit of flipping open my laptop at the kitchen table and then just sitting there for 4 hours and then wondering why my back is killing me. I feel anxiety, real anxiety, if the writing isn't going right. I feel like my life can't run smoothly unless I've got that under control. I'm always, if I finish the writing day and I think, yep, did what I needed to do today, I'm in a good mood, I'm great. It's not that I get grumpy, it's that I get distracted and I get edgy and I need to get back to it and I need to fix it. I'm very driven to complete things. I'm driven to, I want to smooth off the rough ends. If I know I've left it in a place that isn't satisfactory, I just can't wait to get back to it and sort it out. I sometimes play classical music in here. I find I do sometimes listen to an album, but the trouble is if it's an album you really like, you do end up listening to that more than you do working. So, and I do find lyrics can be a bit distracting. So mostly I would either put on classical music or have silence. I like the sound of human voices. That's why I used to love writing in cafes. I really enjoyed being sort of alone, but amongst people. That background hum of conversation I found very soothing. I really liked it. But there came a point where it was just ridiculous. I couldn't go and write in cafes anymore. Which was a real shame. But I couldn't be anonymous anymore. That's why my laptop's always so filthy, because I'll be, eating popcorn's great to eat while you're writing because it's dry. So if you drop it on the keyboard, I am giving the entirely correct impression I'm quite sloppy. I am, yeah. So yeah, that's an issue, dropping stuff on the keyboard. So I like to eat popcorn or nuts or something while I'm writing. Yeah. I think I've only ever once in my whole professional life had writer's block. That was in the second Harry Potter book. And I absolutely froze because the first book had wildly overshot my wildest expectations, and I was in a state of panic. And for the first time in years, I couldn't write. And it only lasted about a week, but I just couldn't see my way forward. I think I was just so overwhelmed. But since then, I don't think I've ever had a case of writer's block. You definitely have days. I've had days where I think, well, that's a load of garbage. Yep, that's not you. None. But it's always useful because sometimes you need to write it out to see that it's garbage, or you need to write it out just to see that it won't work this way, but it will work another way. You've got to try and you've got to fail. And I think as the years roll by, you become more confident that we'll find a way through this. It's fine. I often think when I'm doing self-talk, and that's not the royal we. It's me and the, I sound so pretentious, but it's sort of me and the creature in the lake. I feel like that's a part of me, a weird part of me, that I now have a lot of faith in. That, at 2 a.m, that creature will chuck me something and I'll be good and I'll catch it and I'll take it in the workshop and we'll be good. So I have a lot more faith in that process than I used to have. Yes, it does remain with me. And I excuse my general airheadedness with my family. I mean, sometimes I forget what month I'm in, because in the book I'm in, for example, on the book I'm writing now, I'm currently in January 2017. And because I'm thinking about those dates so much, I literally have to, I leave my writing room at the end of the day and I can't, we're in September. So my husband's talking to me about something that's happening next week, but I'm mentally on a damp Tuesday and Monday, 6 years ago. So you do become incredibly engrossed in it. It becomes phenomenally real to you. I'd lived a huge amount of my life in that world in a way that no one else possibly can. As the writer, it is a totally unique experience. And some of those 17 years had been quite traumatic for me personally. And this was a place I was escaping into. So the idea that I would never be able to escape there again was a bereavement. It really was a bereavement. That said, to be very honest, I was on a certain level relieved it was over. I'd done what I set out to do, and the Potter phenomenon had become something that no one could have predicted what that was going to do, me least of all. I had no idea what was coming. And the intensity of the attention and the pressure while writing that series was such that I was relieved it was over to that extent. And I felt free. I felt I'm free now to, I know it sounds bizarre, but I felt I'm free to fail. I'm free to write what I want to do. If no one wants to read it, that's a very luxurious position to be in. I can just please myself now. It is not advantageous to a writer to become very famous. These are very contradictory things. I think that there are writers who enjoy fame, and there are writers who make an accommodation with fame, and that would be me. And I've made an accommodation with it, and I would be the first to say there are very nice aspects to it. People walking up to you in the street and saying, "You wrote my favourite book," that is a beautiful, wonderful thing to hear. But that said, it was a bereavement. And I know I'm going to feel exactly the same way when I finish the Galbraith books. That's going to be hard for different reasons, because it's been pure joy from start to finish. Well, I think we're living through a really interesting cultural moment for writers and all kinds of creatives, but writers in particular. It is very interesting to consider the degree to which a readership feels they own a property. And I think we're seeing a lot of that at the moment. And there's interesting tension between writers and fandoms. Personally, the truth is, I don't feel I owe anyone anything except the best story I can tell. That is my obligation, to produce the best work I can. So the Ickabog was a unique experience for me, a very, very different writing experience for me. I had the idea for the Ickabog before I'd even published the first Potter, but I didn't do anything with it. But it was one of these ideas that was in the back of my head, waiting for its moment. And then between two of the Potter books, I started playing around with it a bit, and I actually drew. I've got a map of cornucopia that I wrote in about 2000. I drew in about 2000. And then post Potter, I did intend to do the Ickabog next. I really liked the story. And I wrote 2/3 of it. And then I decided not to. I decided I didn't want to put the children's book out next, and I had the idea for the Casual Vacancy, and I thought, I want to do that. And then I did Strike. And then I just thought, well, the Ickabog's time's passed. So I put this 2/3 of this book literally up in the attic in a box. And then when COVID hit, it genuinely came out of, there were two sets of friends in particular, younger than me, who had very young children, sort of primary school age or even younger. And it was so difficult for them. They're trying to homeschool, they're trying to entertain children. And I was thinking, then I thought of the Ickabog, and I thought I could do that. I could just put that out for free. So I finished the book, and then we started putting out a couple of chapters every day. And it was the most beautiful experience for me. The feedback from the children and looking at the children's pictures online was just extraordinary, and it reminded me how much I love writing for children. I don't think that I've ever found being a writer difficult. Ever. That's not to say that writing isn't difficult, and it's not to say I don't think I could improve my writing, because I'm always, that's a given. What I have found difficult are things that came about as an offshoot of my writing. As I say, I just don't think it's a good idea for a writer to become famous. If you've become famous, then lots of people like your work and have bought your work, and that is a beautiful and a wonderful thing. It was just that in my case, it overshot the wildest imaginings of what being a well-known writer would be. I've said this before many times, but the truth is, my wild fantasy would be that I would hand over a credit card in a shop and someone would look at the name on the credit card and say, "Oh, you wrote my favourite book." That's what I thought. That was the cap on my real wild ambition. So what happened, that took a lot of dealing with, yeah. But that's not about the writing. That's about being a famous person. But I feel like as you go, I feel I have made an accommodation with it, I'm not, this is not a sob story. I'm not, asking for pity. I'm just being very honest about the difficulty for me has never been the writing. I was just very aware that because it had my name on it, people would just publish it, however bad it was. And I wanted honest feedback. I wanted to know that this, someone believed in the book. And I truly enjoyed getting unvarnished feedback through my agent. And I remember, this is not me being critical, because I think this is an absolutely fair comment, but very interesting to hear. There was one editor who did not like Strike having a famous father and made that point. And obviously, because I can't break cover, I couldn't say, but I know how important this will be on book 8. You can't say that as a first-time writer, and I am ostensibly in this situation a first-time writer. You can't say, now look, I know a series, and I know this backstory is going to work out brilliantly in books 7, 8, and 9. Who the hell are you to say you're going to get a 7th, 8th, and a 9 novel deal? So, but it was interesting. It was really good to get that feedback. Oh, it was amazing. And the first book won an award, actually, an American award, without anyone knowing it was me. I would have loved to have kept it going. I thought if I could get 3 books out, I wasn't trying to fool anyone. It was just bliss for me, for it just to be about the writing and the reader experience, and, to get honest reviews that weren't reviewing me as a human being. By the end of Potter, some reviews, not all by any means, but, they're reviewing the phenomenon more than they're reviewing the book. Again, not everyone. Some people were reviewing the book, and I'm grateful for that. But it was just great. And then, we had the very unfortunate incident, and it was leaked by someone who certainly shouldn't have leaked it. And I was actually devastated, because it took away from me something that I had got back, something I'd long lost. And that was, it was gone. And it didn't really change the writing, which was great. I think I was afraid it would do. But yeah, I was devastated. I've now created so many characters, it's a nightmare. Because every time I think of a surname, I've used it before. So I have sort of baby name books and surname books, and I'll open them at random and try and fit names together. And there's a name generator online you can go where you just randomise it. And a couple of times, I've never used a name it's generated, but a couple of times you'll see a surname and think, oh, I've never heard of that before, I'll use that. Because yeah, I'm running out of names at this point, I really am. And then you've got to be careful, because you use a surname and then you remember you were at school with someone when you were 12 who had that surname, and is that person going to feel offended? And sometimes you forget that you've met someone of that name, and then they write to you and say, oh, I see you used my surname, and you think, I can't remember who you are. haven't seen you since I was 11. It's tricky. I've always loved the surname Galbraith, and I don't really know why, because I grew up on the Welsh border, and I can't remember ever meeting anyone called Galbraith, so I assume I read it somewhere in a novel, because it's a Scottish name. So I became Robert Galbraith. I liked the rhythm of it. Robert Galbraith is nice, 2 syllables, 2 syllables. I like rhythm in names. I pay a lot of attention to syllables when I'm naming characters, and myself. Read as much as you can, because you will learn, you will enlarge your vocabulary, and you'll start being able to analyse what you like and what you don't like. You'll go through a phase where you imitate your favourite writers. That's great. That's like an apprenticeship, you're learning. There are some basic rules. Of course there are basic rules. You write as well as you can, as much as you can. You've got to put the hours in. You've got to keep writing when it's tough. But no one can actually tell you how to do it. You have to find that out for yourself. And that shouldn't be a discouraging thing. That should be an empowering thing. No one really knows how to do it. And that includes me. I love London. I absolutely love London. Both my parents, although my mum had Scottish blood and French blood, they were both Londoners initially. So it's a city I've known since childhood. I didn't live here till I was an adult, but we were visiting London a lot. So it's always been a really special place to me. And there's such variety in London. That's something that I really try and bring out in the Strike books. You have phenomenally wealthy people living cheek by jowl with very deprived areas. And that there are so many layers to London. So I do really try and evoke London from the seedy and the deprived, all the way through to the very high end and elite. Research is important to me. I do like to go to these places I'm writing about, because although we have these amazing technological tools now, Google Maps is extraordinary, obviously, for a writer. I like to be able to actually smell it and feel it and hear accents and so on. It gives you a totally different feeling. So I do quite a bit of research for Strike. With Neil, my husband, who's a doctor, I have run things past him. But I will my process is normally that I will research it because I know what I need for the plot. But then I'll check, is this correct? Have I got the wrong end of the stick on this drug, or what this injury would do, or what artery this knife would sever? And I'm proud to say he's mostly said, no, this is okay. But I prefer to do it that way round because I know what I need for the plot. So I have to go in on that level rather than getting all this information and then trying to make the plot work around that, you see. I keep using the word grounding, but yeah, they have familiar cafes they go to. There's it just as you do, just as we all do. We know that one cafe that we really like the coffee, or you might really like the owner. And so they have their locals, they have their local cafe. Strike has his favourite local, the Tottenham, which is now renamed the Flying Horse, and he likes that name change because he's an Arsenal fan, so he never really liked it being called the Tottenham. I think it would be a very unusual writer who said they hadn't been influenced by other writers, because of course everything you take in is influencing you. Fiction and reality, all of it's in there. But I've certainly never consciously been influenced by another writer. I've always read a lot of crime fiction. I really enjoy it as a genre, and it's one of the reasons that I wanted to do it myself. I went in with a very specific aim. I wanted to write really a traditional whodunit rather than a police procedural within a modern setting. So that took me a while to find the right character. I wanted someone very contemporary, and I think he is. He was badly injured in a very recent war. But it's old-fashioned in the sense that he is a private detective. He does not have access to DNA labs and so on. And in fact, that's an issue in this current book, which is interesting to write around. So I knew what I wanted to do, and in that respect, yeah, I had been influenced because I knew what I liked from other people. But in terms of plot or character, no, I've never taken anything from anyone else. Yeah, I'm probably quite aware of the things that have already been done, so I avoid those. There are a couple of characters that just persist in my head, definitely, more than others. It's not exactly that they speak to you. Well, no, I suppose they do, really, because I sometimes get random lines of dialogue coming into my mind, and I think of them the way that you would think of a friend when something triggers a memory of them. So yeah, I suppose they really do live in your subconscious. Some characters more than others. But obviously characters that you're with over multiple books, they really stay with you. They don't ever really leave you. I love epigraphs in other people's books if they're well chosen. So really that's why, that's why I like them. And I also like the fact that they set the tone. This is an old-fashioned whodunit. This is not, as I say, a police procedural. They are really eclectic, but that would reflect my reading patterns, So we go relatively highbrow at times with the fairy queen, and then you've got blue oyster cult is in there. And I really enjoy that mix, and it sets the tone for each specific plot. I think what music people listen to is it always tells you something important about them. And Strike's favourite singer is Tom Waits. I chose him carefully because Strike grew up with a mother who was, she's always called a groupie, which is quite a painful thing to have your mother constantly called in press and in music biographies. And she really liked rock, So his father was a lead singer of a rock band. She loved Blue Oyster Cult. She was really obsessed by them. So I thought, Strike's really not going to like any of that. He is not going to want to listen to long-haired guitarists. This is stuff he saw too much of in his childhood. The angel is in the detail, not the devil in the detail. So I love that. I absolutely love creating. I really do. But it's lovely to have the contrast between doing those books, which are pure fantasy, and then moving into a very real London to try and create Strike and Robin. But you're still world building, even though there may be real places within this particular detective world. You are still world building. You're building their world, because how many people live in London? 8 million. Each of them has their own London. It's impossible for any one person to know all of London, to experience London in the same way. And that's part of what I love about writing about a big city. Each person has their own individual city in their heads. So, yeah. For the Strike TV series, I can honestly, it's been one of my very happiest collaborations. I've loved it from start to finish. It's really nice. Just the whole thing is a great experience. The writer who's done most of the screenplays is Tom Edge. He's a fantastic writer. We get on personally very, very well. You accept that TV requires something different. And I'm executive producer, and Tom and I will talk about things, but I think Tom would agree that I pretty much let him have his way. But I'm there, well, not even have his way. I'm happy with what he does. Like 95% of the time, I have no notes. It's little tweaks. I met with him yesterday, and one of my tiny, tiny notes was, Strike wouldn't call Barclay Sam. He's always going to call him Barclay. Just tiny things just to keep the character set where I want the character set. And Tom will do a few things that I think are fabulous. They work so well on TV, but they wouldn't work as well as in a novel. So yeah, I enjoy it. I really enjoy that process. And the two leads actors are phenomenal and they are magnificent in the roles. I always get asked, I think it's quite common when your work's been adapted for film or TV, do you see the actors in your head? And no, I don't. I have a very clear sense of what they look like. And I'm always thinking of them rather than Tom and Holiday when I'm writing. But I've got no issue whatsoever if people are imagining Tom and Holiday when they're reading the books, because I do think they do an amazing job. The most important thing is stopping the TV show doing things that I know are going to make it very difficult for us to get back on course later. You know, that's really it. I'm sometimes tweaking the wheel because I know where we're going and we really don't want to end up over there. And that's often small character points that in the moment, you know, play well in a scene, but you know you're going to have to contradict that completely in the next book or show. So yeah, that's my usefulness. Well, I've had two situations where I have had quite a meaningful talk with actors about character. One was with Alan Rickman. And he rang me up and he said, look, I'm spinning plates here. I really need to understand what Snape's underlying. What is he up to? Am I a pure baddie? So he was the only person I told, you were in love with Harry's mother. And I talked him through it. And I said to him, you're a double agent. But you do dislike Harry. You can't overcome your quite visceral dislike of this boy who looks just like your arch enemy. So I told Alan Rickman what was coming way before it came in the movies. And the other conversation I had was with Tom Burke by text. And this was brilliant because it shows how well he understands the character. So it was sort of the other way around because he's telling me what the character is. And I'm saying, yes, you are completely right. That's what the character is. So he said to me, what about this guitar? There's in the TV show, there's a sort of iron, sort of stylized guitar on the wall. He said, would Strike want that? I said, no, he wouldn't want that. But it was too late, you see, when we started filming. So we talked about why Strike's in Denmark Street. And Tom said to me, I don't think he consciously went to Denmark Street for the music. But I think there was a sort of subliminal influence from his childhood. This felt familiar. And I said, bingo. So we have this little text exchange. And when you're working with an actor, and Holiday's the same. Holiday really has a feel for what Robin would or wouldn't do. When you've got an actor, and Alan was just looking to really inhabit the character more. When you've got actors like that, that's a joy, working with people like that who really get it and want to know more or want to check that their instincts are right. I love that. But an actor has never given me an idea for anything like that. No. I could honestly say there are only two characters I've ever fully, properly based on real people. You know, there was one inspiration source, that's it. And one of them is Berkeley, who is my friend Dave. Yeah, who is Glaswegian, who is very funny, who's very clever. I literally took Dave and obviously I am inventing Berkeley's dialogue and I'm inventing, Dave would want me to say I'm inventing Berkeley's previous drug use as well. Obviously the character is not literally Dave, but he was very consciously inspired by Dave. Mostly it's composite, or you might take an aspect of someone's appearance, or you might, which I've often done. I've often had, even seen someone on the tube or something, and that gives you an idea. I don't like killing off characters, but it's part of life, isn't it? Killing Snape was awful. I always knew. I knew he was going to go. Couldn't bear killing Lupin and Tonks. That was so sad. Fred. And I've now killed off a pretty major character in the Strike books. And which, again, I knew from the start that was going to happen. The question was when, and I thought it might be in book 8, but I decided 7 was the right time for it to happen. Let me be very honest. I think I've had some, there's been criticism in reviews through my career that I think was fair criticism. And in the sense that I would think, yeah, you're right, that was weak and I can do better. But in terms of being influenced by certain things that reviewers would say, I would have to say whatever. I'm whatever. For example, with the Strike books, this is too long. Well, that's how long it had to be to tell the story I wanted to tell. That's how I feel. I'm not going to shave off 200 pages because the book is as long as I want it to be. That's how long it needed to be to tell the story I wanted to tell. That's the way it is. If you don't have faith in yourself as a writer, that is not the same as being so arrogant as to say, no one can edit this, no one's allowed an opinion. But you have to decide who you're going to listen to, who you trust, whose opinion is valid. And I've worked with some amazing editors, and I've listened to every single one of them. And I respect what they say to me. And as I say, there are certain reviews where I think, yeah, that's fair criticism. That wasn't my finest work there. I've got 6 books in my head because I've got the one I'm currently writing. There'll be 2 more strikes, and then there are 3 more books that I really want to get to. I always gesture to the back of my head because I feel a lot of it kind of I'm sure an MRI scan would prove that it's got nothing to do with the back of my brain, but I always find myself sort of doing this when I'm talking about where it comes from. God knows. But yeah, I do have other stories in my head that I really need to get out, yeah.